Welcome back to the Ed Show. 2013, the rich are getting richer. Nothing changed. The poor are getting poorer. That's really what we have talked about on this program and try to illustrate here on the Ed Show for years. And that is what is really driving the conversation on Capitol Hill. And we must challenge our leaders to do something about it. Hold it right there. There's this ideological grab that's taking place in America right now. And we're hearing about fiscal cliff and debt ceiling and money here and there and cuts and whatnot. It is about what the Republicans want to take from the lower income Americans. That is the issue. And our next guest, Bernie Sanders, wants action. And so do the American people. I was struck by his essay in the Huffington Post. It was titled The Soul of America. So well put, because, folks, this is, as I said, an ideological battle, and the deck is basically stacked against you if you're in the middle class or below that. We are experiencing more income inequality now than we have during any time in the period of history since 1928. The top 1% owns 42% of the country's financial wealth. 1% of Americans own 42% of the country's wealth. As for the bottom 80%, they own only 5% of the wealth. Yet despite those kinds of statistics, the Republicans and the big money donors who back them are aiming for more. We've heard all the rhetoric. We don't have enough revenue. Well, wait a minute. We've got too much revenue going in. It's a spending problem. But we all know the reality of it. Republican policies have grown our deficit, the deregulation of Wall Street, the tax breaks for the rich, the wars not being paid for, and now with the Democrat in the White House, the Republicans have suddenly turned into what? Hey, they're deficit hawks, and they want to go after the poorest Americans. They want to attack the very programs that working families have depended on for generations in this country. They want to go after the big three. They want to cut food assistance. They want to cut veterans programs. They want to cut anything that helps the folks stay above water, so to speak. And you know what? As we head into a second administration with President Obama, our country is at a crossroads. We need, I think, our leaders to hold people accountable and to stick up for working families, the poor and the elderly. They have given enough. We can get more revenue. We just have to have the guts to do it. We don't need our leaders to stand in front of big donors and not have the guts to make the decisions of what's right for America. The folks that have to pay more are the Bush-era tax cuts. Those recipients, in my opinion, we can get more out of them. And, of course, it's all about the loopholes, isn't it? Well, how are we going to change tax policy in Washington if we can't get anything passed in the Senate? The entire linchpin to the 113th is going to be what Harry Reid does with changing the rules for the filibuster. Then we can move to get to these tax loopholes that has helped the wealthiest Americans in this country. It's all about ideology. What do you believe in? Do you believe that the lower 80% of Americans should actually serve up a little bit more to make this thing right? Because we never paid for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We never accounted for the Bush tax cuts. The recovery measures that were made and the recession that we went through account for a third of what our financial problems are all about, which were caused by deregulation on Wall Street. Can I have two shows tonight? Joining me now is Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator, good to have you with us tonight. You hit the nail on the head, as you always do, and I encourage our viewers to go to Huffington Post and see what you have written and see how you have capsulized this. Are you confident? Are you optimistic that income inequality will be addressed in a meaningful way during a second term with the Obama administration?
Am I confident? No. Do I believe that is the moral issue of our time? Yes. Do I believe that that is what the American people overwhelmingly want? I do. The statistics that you have brought forth, where you have a handful of people on the top owning tremendous amounts of wealth, and vast majority of the American people owning very little. And that's true not only in wealth, it's true in terms of income distribution, is not only morally wrong, Ed, it is very, very bad economics, because the people at the bottom don't have money to spend. We're not going to create the kinds of jobs this country desperately needs. Mitch McConnell recently said that revenue is not the issue. He is absolutely wrong. Revenue is exactly the issue. What the Republicans, and I have to add, some Democrats want to do is balance the budget by cutting Social Security, which has nothing to do with deficit reduction. They want to cut Medicare, Medicaid, nutrition programs. That is their idea of moving to a deficit reduction. Meanwhile, 1 out of 4 major corporations in this country pays 0 in taxes. We lose $100 billion every single year because corporate America and wealthy individuals stash their money in the Cayman Islands and in other tax havens. Corporations today are paying 12% of their profits in taxes, which is the lowest since 1972. In terms of corporate tax per GDP, we are lower than any other country in the OECD.
I mean, that is just amazing. That is amazing when you throw these numbers out. And I think it brings us back to one word: Americans, focus. You can hear a lot of talk about debt ceiling and deficit reduction. Focus on the ideology of what has brought us to where we are right now, and an ideology that has brought us here is not going to fix it in any way, shape, or form. Senator, the filibuster, doesn't it really start with that? We really got to get that fixed first.
It is enormously important. You know, we grew up as kids believing that in America, majority rules. Well, we got 100 senators. You would think that is that 51 votes would rule, would allow us to pass laws. Since Obama has been president, the Republicans have used in an unprecedented way the filibuster to obstruct and to block legislation. And your point is exactly right. We're not going to have fairness in our policies. We're not going to have progressive tax reform. We're not going to have campaign finance reform unless majority rules in the Senate. And that takes us to filibuster reform, and we have got to pass that.
And there's no sense for the Republicans. I'm imagining what they're talking about in their caucus. Why in the world should they start identifying loopholes? Because we're going to filibuster the thing anyway. We're never going to be forced to show what we think loopholes ought to be closed as far as getting more tax revenue into the system. So they are doing a real classic move here of protecting the corporations and protecting the wealthy. Now, another subject I want to bring up with you, Senator, tonight. Today you came out against the president's nominee for Treasury Secretary Jack Lew. Why did you do that?
Well, Jack is a decent guy. He's a smart guy. He's been in public service for a long time. But frankly, I am really tired of the president, and I support the president, continuing to appoint folks who come from Wall Street. We need people in the Treasury Department, Secretary of Treasury, who are going to have the guts to stand up to Wall Street, to ask why we are not, for example, breaking up the 6 largest financial institutions, Ed, that have assets equivalent to 2/3 of the GDP of the United States, to ask questions about how we got into this recession in the first place, which has everything to do with the greed and recklessness and illegal behavior on Wall Street. Okay. To ask why it is there are people watching the show paying 25% interest rates on their credit cards. Those are my concerns. We need somebody at the Department of Treasury who's going to have the guts to take on Wall Street and not simply come from Wall Street.
Senator, great to have you with us tonight. Obviously, we'll do it again. I appreciate it so much. Senator Bernie Sanders with